unimaginable that they're not going to suffer an enormous cost over time for what they have done. In a certain way, I think it's wonderful news because it looks like it's going to end the genocide. And I think ending the genocide is of enormous importance. And it does look like it's going to do that. Whether that holds over the long term remains to be seen.
For all of its shortcomings, John Mearsheimer just declared that Trump's Gaza plan ends the genocide in Gaza, and he seems to have a more optimistic feel about this framework than people like Jeffrey Sachs, who have lambasted it. He gets into the shortcomings of this deal, what it means, what the chances are of this holding long term and establishing peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and where the U.S. fits in all this. So let's get a look at it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
But at least for the time being, it looks like the genocide is going to be shut down. Amen. With regard to creating a viable political solution to, let's call it, the Palestinian problem, I don't think that this comes close to doing that. There are just a huge number of issues that are still on the table that haven't been resolved, that have to be resolved before this problem is largely solved. And also, you just want to keep in mind that the genocidal monsters who run Israel are still in power, and they are still committed to ethnically cleansing Gaza.
Right. Have they ever abided by a ceasefire?
Well,
the short answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is no. But what's very interesting is if you read what's floating around in the media today, it's quite clear that the Palestinians and their allies are aware of that phenomenon that you just described. And they have said that before this hostage exchange takes place, the Israelis are going to have to commit to a peace agreement, that this is the end of the fighting, and that is going to be enforced by the mediators, who I take to be the United States, the Qataris, and maybe the Egyptians. It's not perfectly clear, but it certainly has to include the United States. And furthermore, Judge, you want to understand that President Trump has really put himself out front on this issue. He's really committed to creating peace in Greater Israel.
Well, I think he wants that. I don't know that he's committed. He's certainly not committed to the extent that he would withdraw support from Israel if he doesn't get that. Certainly not. He seems to side with Netanyahu and Israel on everything. But look, Mearsheimer and the judge are correct about broken ceasefires. If you look at the historical ceasefires that Israel has broken, you take a look at Grok or other sources for this. It's over 1,000 broken ceasefires in the Gaza conflict alone throughout the years. And that doesn't include Israel's other wars and military operations, regime change operations, in which there's a temporary pause in hostilities. And, you know, the Israelis will dispute this, right, because a lot of this is Palestinian sources, but the UN and OHCHR confirm hundreds. It's definitely in the hundreds. What's more is the plan has a lot of shortcomings, including this 20th point. It says nothing about the potential for Palestinian statehood, and instead it's just this abstract idea that a dialogue will be established between Israel and Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for a peaceful and prosperous coexistence. This strikes me as, you know, business speak for, we're going to have a meeting to set the agenda for meetings to unfold and dictate where we go next. It's absurd. And that's the number one ask. That's the number one ask of the Arab states that sat down after the Beirut summit in 2002 and drafted a framework of 10 points, very simple, that calls for normalized relations with Israel and also a Palestinian state. Furthermore, on point 16, there's a new authority being created with Trump to head a new board that will, in collaboration with the Israelis, determine when, if Hamas has demilitarized and disarmed, given up their arms. And the way this can be read is that unless, you know, Gaza is Belgium tomorrow, they can keep the hostilities going. So I don't have as much promise about this ending hostilities or ending the genocide as Mearsheimer does.
Now, whether he can pull it off, it's a completely different matter. But I'm just saying that Trump has a lot invested in what's happening right now. His reputation is on the line. And he has said that, we're going to get peace. And the Palestinians have said that the mediators, which includes the United States, have agreed that this is not going to start up again. We're not going to go through the first phase. And then when the second phase comes, the Israelis decide that they can undo things like they did earlier this year. So we'll see.
Yeah, that is generally what they said, but Hamas said, hey, we're going to free the hostages. That's the number one propaganda talking point among Zionists, even though Netanyahu clearly doesn't want them released because that serves as his justification to keep the ethnic cleansing going. But they said, hey, we have some problems with other parts of this, and I can't blame them, by the way, for things that I just described. So, yeah, I guess we'll see.
You have articulated what Netanyahu and Smotrich and Gvir and even somebody as moderate by Israeli standards as President Herzog has said before, which is they're going to take Gaza, they're going to mow the lawn, there will never be a Palestinian form of governance there. So where is this going to go? Why would, no matter what Donald Trump promises, Hamas have any faith in the longevity of this beyond the exchange of hostages? The Israelis are returning 1,000 hostages, including this one fellow whose name you may know that the Palestinians regard as their Abraham Lincoln. I forget his name.
Marwan Barghouti.
Correct. And the Hamas people, even though they apparently don't control all the hostages, live and dead, are going to return the ones they control. Why would they expect any agreement to benefit them beyond that exchange? What would prevent the IDF from coming right back into Gaza, whether it's boots on the ground or jets in the skies?
Well, to be clear, I don't know that they're going to let Marwan Barghouti out. The Palestinians have been demanding that, but what the final deal looks like with regard to Barghouti, I'm not sure.
And for people that don't know, Marwan Barghouti led street protests on behalf of the Palestinians during the second Intifada, I can never say that word correct. In 2002, he actually got arrested, and the Israelis, claimed that he incited the killings of multiple people. I haven't looked deeply into that, but that is who he is. That's the guy that they refer to as their Abraham Lincoln. Very prominent political captive.
With regard to the Palestinians and their trust of Israel, they don't trust the Israelis as far as they can throw them, as I said before. But Hamas is in a really difficult situation. There's tremendous pressure from below inside of Gaza to reach some sort of accommodation and to put an end to the genocide. And as I said before, I do think the agreement that's on the table does put an end to the genocide. And it does give the Palestinians a lot of breathing room. You want to remember that the Israelis in the next couple of days are going to pull out of Gaza City. They're going to pull out of Rafah. They're going to pull out of Khan Yunis, right? Those are the three big cities in Gaza. And the humanitarian aid is going to flow in. And so this is all wonderful news, given what's been happening over the past 2 years. But the Palestinians understand that they cannot let their guard down, and they have to worry constantly about the Israelis starting this up again. Again, the Israelis are bent. You talk about mowing the lawn. The Israelis are not interested in a situation where the Palestinians in Gaza are in a concentration camp, and every 2 or 3 years they come in and mow the lawn. That's not what they want. What they want is they want to drive all the Palestinians out. That's their goal.
Right.
And people who have been in charge over the past 2 years, these people who are referred to as genocidal monsters, are still in control.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? This right-wing coalition filled with monsters is the literal term for it. Israel Katz and Smotrich and Netanyahu and Ben Gvir, the worst of the worst criminals, are in charge of that rogue state right now, and Trump's culpable. And what's to tell us that if the second Netanyahu wants to, that he doesn't violate this, and that the U.S. won't respond in any way that's adversarial to him. There's nothing for us to tell us that. In fact, the U.S. just gets dragged into whatever Netanyahu seems to want to do, including in Iran, the most recent example, and not doing anything to curtail the genocide in Gaza. You can say this plan tries to do that, but there's no leverage connected to this with withdrawing U.S. aid from Israel if Netanyahu fails to comply with the dictums of this 20-point plan. If you had that in this kind of plan, that would pique my interest. But that's not going to happen as long as AIPAC has such control of our U.S. political system.
And they still have the same goal. And they'll be looking for every opportunity they can to drive the Palestinians out. The Palestinians know that. And I would bet Trump knows that as well. But the question is, what can Trump do? What can the Palestinians do? And that's why it's hard to say for sure where this one goes over the long term.
How has Israel changed in the past 2 years while its forces have slaughtered 100,000 people?
Look, there's no way you can engage in a war and a genocide like this and it not have a profound effect on your society. And I believe that effect will be overwhelmingly negative. I think that, if this conflict is shut down in a meaningful way, at least for the foreseeable future, and the Israelis are put in a position where they have to reflect on what has happened, they will conclude almost across the board that this has been a disaster. I mean, we talk about the fact that their reputation has been sullied forever. And I think this is certainly true. For the Jewish people to be accused of a genocide is something that is going to be extremely difficult to live with.
Yeah, but irrefutable at this point, right? There's so many countries that acknowledge that acknowledge the war criminality of Benjamin Netanyahu, what he should go down for, if not the fraud and corruption charges, the war criminality charges that he should have. Despite that, he waltzes around and boasts about how he wants to censor Americans. He wants to talk to Elon Musk. What does he mean by talk to Elon Musk? It means pressure him to censor dissident voices that criticize Israel. That's what he means. When he says he hopes the TikTok deal goes through, what does it mean? It means he hopes that Larry Ellison is elevated to be the overseer of a major social media platform that he didn't exactly like. Why? Because images and videos slipped out of Gaza showing Israel's atrocities, showing the evils of the IDF on full display for the first time to many Americans that did not see that in 4K when the mainstream legacy media had a total stranglehold on the media landscape in general. Now we have the independent media, shows like this, hopefully shows like mine, that try to present a more realistic view about what's happening there. And yeah, their reputation is going to suffer immensely. In the United States, it won't be right away because the Israel lobby still has full control almost of our system. Mearsheimer knows that more than anyone. He wrote with Stephen Walt the best book on the Israel lobby. It's incredibly prophetic. I think he wrote it in 2007. It's called The Israel Lobby. Highly recommended. Talking about this and its influence. But that influence is waning. I don't think it will result in political changes, major ones, for maybe 10 years. But younger people are just not buying it anymore. Who could? And you can see this on the right. Nothing more than the Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA story shows that. How younger activists are just turning away. So that's the dynamic at play here. Whether it hurts Israel from the inside is a matter of how the Israelis respond to this, and if the left-wing opposition takes control there, displaces the Likudniks, we'll have to see what the results of that will be. But I could see a reactionary, drift even farther to the right that'll inflame even more tensions and maybe suck the U.S. into a greater Middle Eastern war. Horrible scenario, but I guess it's possible.
But it's not just that. If you look at Israel's situation inside of Greater Israel and with its neighbors, the situation is not good at all. Here in the Western media, everybody likes to talk about all these great victories the Israelis have won. Oh, they did this and that to Iran in June and so forth and so on. They decapitated Hamas, they decapitated Hezbollah and so forth and so on. this is not an accurate representation of what has happened. Why are we talking about attacking Iran again in the fall if we beat them in June? The fact is, we, meaning the Israelis and the Americans, didn't defeat them in June.
Yeah, it's an admission when you talk about and clamor for renewed hostilities against Iran that we didn't do what Trump alleged. And back when that happened, people watched this channel and knew about my coverage of it. I said, like, this is totally false. It's clear that they've, smuggled out some of the enriched uranium from at least Fordo, one of the 3 facilities that the U.S. bombed, but they're going to reconstitute their nuclear program. And now they do have unlimited incentive to develop a nuke. And we're going to clamor for this again, but the Trump administration was like, we took it out. I think we took it out fully. He had a press conference with Hegseth talking about this. And I said, well, I don't think that's right, but I kind of like this as propaganda right now from the Trump administration, such that it convinces Americans not to get back involved in this. But I think that's a serious concern again, with Netanyahu sitting down with good old Ben Shapiro in a recent interview talking about, hey, Iran is developing a nuclear missile to hit the U.S., and it could hit New York City, Boston, Washington, or Miami. Anywhere could be next. That's a real danger. You don't want to be under the nuclear gun of these people. They're ramping up the propaganda again. It was destined to happen.
And the reason we're going back after the Iranians in all likelihood in the fall is because we didn't defeat them. They're still there. With regard to Hamas, Hamas is not finished. Look at the deal that's now on the table. Hezbollah is not finished. The Israelis are back to square one in very important ways in a lot of these conflicts. And one could argue in the Iranian case, they're worse off.
Yeah, totally agree with this. This is no doubt, this is the result of the Israel first mentality. I don't think we're coming back from this. Even if this leads to a lasting peace in the region between the Israelis and Palestinians, they haven't wiped out the terrorist groups that they complain about. Those terrorist groups continue to serve as a justification to drag the U.S. in, to get us to send them billions of dollars, which the U.S. has over $300 billion since the conception of Israel. $32 billion in the last 2 years since October 7th. And there's nothing to say that this kind of strategy is going to eliminate all the terrorists in the world. It's kind of the same logic you had from the United States and George Bush and the neocons saying, well, to confront terrorism, we need to have this global war on terrorism. It was an abstract war, and with an abstract war comes abstract timelines, meaning that there is no timelines. This can go on indefinitely, and when you kill people, it's only pretty natural and consequential that, hey, if a dead girl dies, their brother or cousin or uncle or father is going to step in and, join some of these groups. Some of them will be resistance groups. Some of them will be terrorist groups. But either way, that's what you're going to get. This is what General McChrystal, no libertarian or non-interventionist by any stretch, said when he talked about insurgent math in 2010. This is the ramifications of that policy and the Israel first mentality. So yeah, I think Mearsheimer is making a lot of good points here. He's more optimistic about this ending the genocide than I am or Jeffrey Sachs is. But let's hope, man. I hope to be proven wrong on this one. I pray that I'm proven wrong on this one. I don't want more people to die, regardless of my attitudes toward Israel in general. The most important thing is for people to stop dying. And I have that attitude in Israel just as much as I have it in Ukraine. It's all part of U.S. empire building and the most toxic effects of those policies. But I do want to hear from you. Is John Mearsheimer right? Will the Gaza plan end the genocide or lead to a lasting peace? Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to Judge Napolitano. This was an awesome interview. And if you like this video and my commentary, it would mean the world to me if you choose to join the channel as a member. If you click the join button below, you can do that, help support the channel. And in return for that, I'm going to give you something really cool. You'll be able to access all the videos that I create before they go live to the general audience on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.